Secrets hide in every corner of the world, stories that have always been beyond understanding. But we have come to uncover those secrets to places where the darkness never ends. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. This is episode 19. I'm Aditya and today I bring you 3 terrifying stories. New stories. A new week. A new kind of fear. In the last episode, episode 18, we explored spine-chilling creepypasta horror stories. If you missed it, the link is in the description, go check it out. So let's begin. Episode 19. If you are new here, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe before you go. Today, we will hear 3 stories, creepy, unnerving, and straight from the world of creepypasta. If you love horror stories like these, you've come to the right place, because Dynamic Dark is the only channel bringing you creepypasta and Indian urban legend tales. For the best experience, put on your earbuds or headphones, let the horror fully take over. The first story is The Vanishing Hotel Room. The second story is The Caller at 317. And the third story is The Mirror That Remembers. So, let's begin with our first story, The Vanishing Hotel Room. A lone tourist arrived at the city late in the evening, her body tired from hours of travel, yet a strange excitement kept her awake. The hotel she chose was grand, old-fashioned, almost forgotten by time. Its facade was cracked, the paint peeling, and the faint glow of the lobby lights seemed to struggle against the thick fog outside. She remembered the room number clearly, room 409. Even as she walked through the lobby, the silence pressed against her ears. The old chandelier swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. Each step she took on the creaking wooden floorboards echoed like distant whispers, and for a moment, she swore she could hear faint scratching sounds coming from the walls themselves. The hallway to her room was long, impossibly long. The lights flickered overhead, plunging her path into darkness for brief moments. Shadows stretched across the wallpaper like living things, moving just out of the corner of her eye. The paintings lining the corridor, portraits of men and women long gone, seemed to watch her. Their eyes followed her, silently judging, silently waiting. She reached room 409. The door looked normal enough. But the key turned in the lock with a sound far too loud in the quiet hallway, a screech that lingered, almost as if the door itself was screaming from the inside. She stepped over the threshold, and the air felt different. Heavier, charged like electricity before a storm. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the shadows pooling in the corners. The wallpaper had faded patterns, but she could swear they shifted subtly when she wasn't looking directly. The bed seemed untouched, yet the sheets rustled as if someone or something had just left. The old mirror across the room reflected her, but for a split second, she could have sworn her reflection didn't move exactly with her. She set down her suitcase, but her hands trembled. Every small sound, the tick of the clock, the hum of the radiator, the faint creak of the building settling felt amplified. Then came the whispers. Soft, almost inaudible at first. She froze. Her name, whispered over and over, curling around the corners of the room. The voice wasn't male or female, it didn't belong to anyone she knew. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination. That old buildings make sounds. That fatigue plays tricks. Yet, as she climbed into bed, the whispers grew louder, sharper. The darkness in the corners of the room seemed to thicken, as if something was crawling toward her, just out of sight. The silence she had counted on was gone. The stillness of the night no longer felt comforting. It was alive, watching, waiting. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. She couldn't tell. Every shadow seemed to twitch with intent. Every small noise, the creak of a floorboard, the flutter of curtains, even her own breathing sounded monstrous. Sleep wouldn't come. And in the darkness, she understood something terrifying: she was not alone. Not even close. For the rest of the night, she lay there, staring at the corner of the room, imagining faces, shapes, or hands reaching out from the shadows. Each flicker of light from the hallway outside made her jump. Every whisper seemed to come closer. And through it all, the silence watched her back, patient, hungry, and unyielding. By the time dawn approached, she didn't move. She couldn't move. The room had changed. It felt bigger, darker, and somehow alive. And as she finally drifted into a restless sleep, one thought burned in her mind, echoing louder than any whisper. Room 409 was not just a room. It was a trap. The next morning, she stepped out of her room, leaving her suitcase and passport behind. The lobby seemed quieter than before, but not in the normal way, almost unnervingly silent, like the building itself was holding its breath. Even the faint sunlight streaming through the windows felt muted, weak, as though the hotel swallowed it whole. She walked down the hallway, expecting the familiar dim glow, the flickering yellow lights, and the warped, peeling wallpaper of room 409, but everything looked wrong. The corridor seemed longer than she remembered, stretching endlessly into shadows that twisted and shifted. The doors that had lined the hallway the night before now shimmered as if freshly painted, their numbers rearranged in illogical sequences. Some doors seemed to fade in and out, ghostly outlines appearing where solid wood should be. Each step on the creaking floorboards sounded unnaturally loud, echoing like a drumbeat of warning. And then, just at the edge of her vision, she saw it, shadows flitting along the walls, fleeting shapes she couldn't identify, apparitions of former guests, pale and translucent, watching her with hollow eyes. Her heart raced. She approached the spot where room 409 had been. Nothing. Just a blank section of wall, slightly rippling, like the building itself was breathing. The cold that shot down her spine wasn't just from the air, it was from the feeling of invisible eyes, watching her panic, following every motion. She could almost feel fingers brushing her back, even though no one was there. Whispers began again, louder now, urgent, as if trying to warn her. Some sounded like her own voice, echoing through the hallway, twisted, distorted, mocking. The hallway warped as she turned toward the receptionist. Doors shifted unnaturally, stretching and bending, twisting into impossible angels. Shadows crawled along the walls, some stretching impossibly long, others flickering in and out, almost dancing with malevolence. A pale, semi-transparent figure appeared near the corner where room 409 had been, a hand pressed against the wall, just for a second, then vanished. Behind it, the wallpaper seemed to breathe, curling and twisting like living skin. She stumbled forward, her suitcase forgotten, the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Faint wails echoed from nowhere, bouncing off the walls and ceiling. It was as if every soul who had ever passed through that hotel whispered at once. Each sound made the hallway feel alive, as if it were watching, judging, playing with her sanity. The elevator doors opened to floors that shouldn't exist, the numbers flickering, showing ghostly lights from within. She turned back to the blank space where 409 should have been, and for a fleeting second, the door materialized, glowing faintly, almost alive. She wanted to reach for it, to open it, but it disappeared again, swallowed by shadows. She realized, with growing horror, that her belongings, her suitcase, her passport, were still inside that vanished room, trapped in a place that might not even exist. The hotel wasn't just a building. It was a living entity, bending reality, swallowing pieces of her world. And the chilling thought that clawed at her mind, the room hadn't vanished from the hotel, it had vanished from reality itself. And she might be next. Confused and trembling, she rushed toward the receptionist, her shoes echoing loudly on the polished floor, each step magnified in the unnatural silence of the lobby. The air was thick, almost suffocating, carrying a faint chill that crept along her spine and made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. Her heart pounded violently, and her hands shook as she leaned over the counter, trying to steady her voice. "Where's room 409? She demanded, her words sharp and trembling. The receptionist looked up slowly. At first glance, he seemed calm, polite, almost ordinary. But then she noticed it, his eyes. Empty, hollow, staring past her, as if he were looking into a void far beyond the lobby. His lips moved, but the monotone words that emerged sent a shiver through her entire body. "Miss, there has never been a room 409 in this hotel." She laughed nervously, hoping to mask her growing panic. That's impossible," she said. But the laugh caught in her throat. Something was very wrong. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, a cold so unnatural it felt alive, crawling into her chest, making it hard to breathe. Shadows in the corners of the lobby stretched and twisted unnaturally, dark tendrils curling along the walls and floor as if reaching for her. Her eyes scanned the lobby, trying to find some rational explanation. Other staff moved silently, their faces pale, almost translucent, like spirits masquerading as humans. Their motions were fluid but jerky at the same time, too perfect, too unnatural, and the whispers started again, faint at first, then growing in volume. Words she didn't understand, echoes of her own voice, and soft moans of unseen guests brushed against her ears. She stepped back, nearly tripping over her own feet. The polished floor beneath her reflected the flickering chandeliers above, but the reflection was distorted. For a fraction of a second, she saw herself lying in a long, impossible hallway that wasn't there, shadows stretching from her body into the walls, merging with pale, ghostly figures that appeared and vanished without warning. The air felt alive, charged with the energy of something malevolent, intelligent, and ancient. Panic welled up inside her. Every instinct screamed to run, but where could she go? The lobby itself seemed to stretch and twist, bending reality around her. Every door, every shadow, every whisper carried an intent to confuse, trap, and consume. She noticed faint, translucent hands pressing through the walls and ceilings, moving closer with each heartbeat. They weren't solid, but their presence was undeniable, cold and relentless. The whispers turned into a chorus, blending voices of the past and present. Some were pleading, some laughing, some screaming in agony, and in the middle of it all, a faint echo of her own voice calling her name. Her knees weakened. Her vision blurred as the lobby seemed to pulse around her, alive, watching, waiting. She realized with a sickening clarity, room 409 had never existed in the world she knew. And now, she wasn't entirely part of it either. As the receptionist's empty-eyed stare bore into her, She felt the air grow heavier still, the weight of unseen presences pressing against her chest. The lobby stretched and warped, the shadows thickened, and the ghostly whispers rose into a crescendo. One last glance into the polished floor revealed her reflection, or what should have been her reflection, lying in the hallway that no longer existed, reaching out for her, pleading silently. And then it vanished. The hotel, she realized in horror, was alive, aware, and unforgiving. And she had just stepped into a nightmare that was far from over. Panicked and trembling, she demanded answers again, her voice cracking under the weight of terror. My luggage, my passport, everything was inside that room, she cried, her hands shaking as if the very act of pointing to the empty hallway would summon the room back. But the staff's faces remained unnervingly calm, almost rehearsed, their hollow eyes betraying nothing but silence. They led her to the 4th floor. Each step up the elevator felt heavy, as though invisible hands pressed down on her shoulders. When the doors slid open, the hallway stretched endlessly before her, longer and darker than any hallway should be. The walls seemed alive, faintly breathing, rippling as if something were trapped just beneath the surface. Shadows flickered in impossible directions, crawling along the walls, twisting around corners, vanishing and reappearing as if playing with her mind. She glanced around desperately, scanning each door. Room 409, nowhere. The numbers shifted subtly before her eyes, doors appearing and disappearing, some slightly ajar with glimpses of dark, empty rooms, others sealed tight with shadows swirling behind them. A faint whisper echoed from a distance, soft at first, but growing louder, almost calling her name. She froze, feeling an unseen presence brush against her back. Something moved just beyond her vision, a pale, transparent figure, its hollow eyes following her every movement. The staff searched with her, opening doors that led nowhere, hallways that bent unnaturally, some stretching impossibly long into darkness. Each time a door opened, a cold gust of air rushed past her, carrying faint cries, moans, and whispers of past visitors. Her luggage, her passport, all of it seemed swallowed by the building itself. The walls hummed, vibrating with an energy that was alive, aware, and watching her. And then she heard it, faint knocking, echoing from the space where room 409 had been. Not a single knock, a steady rhythm, as if someone trapped inside the wall was begging to be let out. The whispers grew louder, merging with the knocking, forming a chorus of voices pleading, angry, and sinister. She wanted to run, but her feet felt heavy, glued to the floor by some unseen force. Shadows leaned closer, stretching unnaturally, some almost reaching for her, some forming ghostly silhouettes of previous guests, trapped like she feared she might be. The realization hit her like ice. The room had never existed in the way she thought, and yet, everything she owned, everything tangible, had been swallowed by its disappearance. The hotel was no longer a building, it was a living, malevolent entity, rearranging reality, bending space, and swallowing pieces of her world. And the worst part, she could feel it watching her, judging, deciding if she too would vanish, leaving no trace at all. That night, the silence of the hotel pressed down on her like a living weight. She crept along the dimly lit hallway, heart pounding in her ears, each step echoing unnaturally, bouncing off walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. And then, she saw it. A faint glow at the end of the corridor, room 409, pulsing softly, as if it were breathing, alive. Her pulse quickened. She ran toward it, desperate, calling out, but with every step, the door drifted farther away, floating just beyond reach. Shadows twisted around her, faces forming in the walls, whispering her name, as cold air brushed past, carrying faint wails of the trap. She stretched her hand, almost touching the glowing doorknob, and it flickered, vanishing into the darkness, leaving only an endless, empty hallway behind. The next morning, the lobby seemed calm, but an icy chill lingered, pressing against her absence. The receptionist flipped through the guest register, his eyes hollow. No record of her name. No passport entry. It was as if she had never existed. New guests whispered about strange sounds from the fourth floor. The staff smiled, unnaturally calm, and said softly, "There has never been a fourth floor." From the corners of the lobby, shadows stretched and twisted unnaturally, while faint, ghostly figures flickered just out of sight. Whispers and soft knocks echoed from nowhere, chilling every visitor. Somewhere in the walls, her voice called out, faint but desperate, trapped in a place that didn't exist. The hotel breathed, alive and patient, waiting for its next victim to wander into the shifting, haunted corridors, where rooms appear, then vanish, and some souls never leave. Today's second story is The Caller at 3:17. It began on a quiet, still night, when the world outside seemed to hold its breath. A college student lay in her bed, scrolling lazily on her phone, the only light in the room a faint glow from the screen. Then, suddenly it rang. 3:17 a.m. sharp. Her heart skipped a beat as she glanced at the screen. No caller ID, just a blank, unrecognizable number. Curiosity and unease wrestled inside her. She answered cautiously, but there was nothing. Only heavy, uneven breathing that seemed to fill the room, echoing as if multiple people were standing just outside her door. At first, she laughed nervously, telling herself it was probably a prank, someone messing with the clock, some app glitch. But then it came, a sound she could never unhear. Her own laughter, warped, distorted, echoing back at her through the line. It was slightly delayed, slowed, and colder than any sound she had ever heard herself make. Her skin crawled, goosebumps rising along her arms. The room felt smaller suddenly, the shadows at the corners seeming to stretch toward her. She held the phone tighter, eyes darting toward the window. Shadows moved unnaturally along the walls, stretching like fingers. Something flickered behind the partially drawn curtains, a dark, shapeless figure with glowing red eyes that vanished when she blinked. Every time she took a breath, it felt closer, as if the very air was alive and observing her. The line crackled again, more heavy breathing, punctuated by faint whispers that sounded like her own voice, echoing in a twisted mockery. Her phone rang again. 3:17 a.m. She froze. The number hadn't changed. The breathing was heavier, almost deliberate, and she could hear her heart pounding in sync with the distant rhythm of the calls. The shadows on the walls thickened, swirling together into smoky, black apparitions that hovered, coiled, and drifted toward her. Her bed sheets twitched as if invisible hands pulled at them, and the once safe room felt alive and hostile. She wanted to hang up. She wanted to run. But curiosity, terror, and disbelief kept her glued to the phone. And then, faintly at first, she heard movement, footsteps circling her room, soft but purposeful, like something pacing in the darkness. The distorted laughter returned, this time mingled with whispers. "You shouldn't be here." Every sound, every shadow, every flicker in the room confirmed one thing: this wasn't a prank, and this wasn't human. The night had claimed her space, and the calls were only the beginning. The calls didn't stop. Night after night, the same routine. 3:17 a.m. sharp. The phone would ring, and the same silence would pour through, thick and suffocating, until the laughter arrived. At first, it was her own voice mocking her back. But over time, it began to change. It grew older, rougher, almost animalistic, as if dozens of voices were laughing together, layered on top of each other. Each night, it was harder to tell where her voice ended and the others began. She became obsessed. She tried recording the calls, hoping for proof, hoping to catch the truth. But every playback was worse than the night before. The recordings warped the air in her dorm room, faint whispers could be heard under the laughter. Sometimes they called her name. Sometimes they spoke in languages she couldn't recognize. Sometimes they simply wept. The worst was when the laughter stopped midway through a playback, and she heard breathing directly behind her even though she was alone. Her nights blurred into restless paranoia. She unplugged her phone. The calls still came. She bought a new phone. 3:17 it rang again. She tried turning it off completely, yet somehow the screen lit up in the darkness, illuminating her terrified face reflected in its cracked glass. The laughter was no longer just sound, it had a presence. When she looked into the mirror, she swore she saw her reflection mouthing the words before the recording played them back. Her friends stopped visiting. They complained that her room felt suffocating, heavy, as if the walls themselves were leaning inward. Objects began to move, pens rolling off desks, curtains shifting despite closed windows. At night, the phone would ring, and the shadows would ripple across the floor in sync with the sound, like dark spirits crawling closer with every laugh. The girl tried to sleep with headphones on, drowning out the world with music. But even then, at exactly 3:17, the headphones went dead. No music. Just silence. Then, her laughter, warped and broken, filling her ears as though whispered directly from within her skull. She screamed. No one heard. And in that moment, she realized the calls were no longer coming from a phone line. They were coming from inside her room, and closer each night. One night, she decided she couldn't take it anymore. The calls had haunted her for weeks. Always the same time. Always the same silence. But tonight, she was ready. She set up her camera, pointed at her bed, and waited. The hours crept by. The silence pressed against her chest, heavy, suffocating. Every tick of the clock echoed in her skull. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the phone rang. Her hands trembled. Her throat tightened. She answered. Nothing. No voice. But not empty silence. This silence was alive. Slow. Heavy. Too close. Her laptop screen flickered. The live feed appeared. And she froze. She saw herself sleeping. From an angle no camera could capture. A corner of the room she couldn't see. The shadows there moved, twisting like black smoke. Faces forming, hollow eyes, broken mouths, all staring. Then came the whispers. Her name, first one, then another, and another. Dozens of voices chanting, laughing, crying. Echoing through her bones. Her phone grew cold. Frost spread over the edges of the screen. Then words appeared. I'm already here. Her breath caught. She turned toward the corner. Darkness. Empty. But on the feed, something crawled closer. Pale hands dragging across the floor, reaching toward her bed. The camera jolted. A face filled the feed. black. Hollow. Grinning. No eyes. Only void. The lights flickered. The voices rose into screams. The air split with dragging sounds, heavy, wet, coming closer. She dropped the phone. Her body frozen. Shadows wrapped around her like chains. On the feed, she saw herself being dragged inch by inch into the corner. Her mouth opened, no sound. Then one whisper, clear at her ear. Her own voice. Don't wake up. The screen cut to static. The phone began to ring again. And the room went dark. She tried to leave the room, but the laughter followed her. Soft at first, like a distant child giggling. Then louder, whispering from the walls. From the ceiling. Even from her own reflection in the mirror. Every hallway she stepped into, every corner she turned. She could feel it watching, waiting, crawling closer. The laughter twisted and warped. Sometimes high-pitched, sometimes low, guttural, impossible. It seeped into her thoughts, into her bones. Her heartbeat raised. Her legs trembled. She realized it wasn't just a call anymore. It wasn't outside. It was inside her room, inside her mind, inside her very being. And then she heard it, right behind her. A voice laughing in her ear, soft but full of malice. You can't leave, not ever. The lights flickered. Shadows danced on the walls like twisted puppets. The mirror showed not her own reflection, but dozens of pale faces, grinning, whispering. All laughing, all watching, all waiting. She tried to scream. No sound came. Only the laughter. And the feeling that she was no longer alone. That something had entered her very soul. At 3:17 a.m., she finally dared to look at the phone. The screen froze, showing a live image of herself sleeping in bed. At first, she thought it was just the camera angle. But then, her blood ran cold. The figure on the screen was moving, mimicking her every twitch, every breath, perfectly. Not her. A dark copy. Its movements were slightly delayed, like it was learning, observing, waiting. She blinked, and the figure blinked back. Her hand twitched, and so did it. Panic surged through her. The shadows in the room thickened, stretching toward the screen. Whispers echoed, layered, distorted, repeating her thoughts. The figure raised its head. It stared at her through the screen. Its eyes, black voids, filled with malice. And then it smiled. She dropped the phone. Her reflection in the window showed not just herself, but dozens of pale, dark copies behind her, all grinning, all watching. The room felt alive, crawling, breathing, waiting. She realized she was never alone. And that night, she would never be the same. The next morning, the student never woke up. Her parents rushed into her room. The bed was empty, but the phone was still recording. When they played it, the laughter was gone, replaced by a faint, chilling whisper. She answers now, every night, at 3:17. The phone vibrated softly, as if calling someone new. Somewhere, a new call waited for the next victim. The room went cold. The shadows seemed to lean closer. And the whisper echoed again. She answers now. Today's story is the mirror that remembers. He bought an old mirror at a flea market, shiny, but slightly tarnished. At first, it seemed normal, just an antique decoration. But soon, he noticed something strange. The reflection was a fraction of a second late. If he raised his hand, The reflection followed after a brief pause. At night, faint whispers came from the mirror, and shadows seemed to move inside the glass. One evening, he touched it, but the reflection didn't. Then it smiled, a grin he hadn't made. He realized the mirror wasn't reflecting him. It was watching, learning, waiting. One night, he noticed something impossible. His reflection was smiling. But he wasn't. His eyes widened in shock. He leaned closer, heart pounding. But the mirror stayed calm, the sinister smile lingering, mocking him. Faint whispers began to echo from the glass. Soft at first, unintelligible, then slowly forming words, calling his name. Shadows inside the mirror twisted and stretched, as if the reflection wasn't just reflecting him, but watching, learning, waiting. He realized he wasn't alone, and whatever lived inside the mirror had noticed him. Days passed. The mirror's reflection no longer just lagged, it started moving on its own. It mouthed words he couldn't hear, made gestures he hadn't made, twisting, contorting as if mocking him silently. One evening, he stepped back, heart racing. The reflection didn't follow. It stayed frozen, watching him, grinning, patient, waiting. He realized it wasn't reflecting anymore. It was observing, planning something darker. He tried everything, covering the mirror, hiding it, even turning it to the wall. But at night, faint glimmers of movement appeared through the edges. Soft tapping, whispering. Something trying to reach through the glass. Shadows twisted along the frame, crawling like living fingers. The whispers grew louder, urgent, echoing inside the room. Every reflection in the darkness seemed to stare back, waiting, hungry. He realized no matter what he did, the mirror was not just glass. It wanted him. One night, unable to sleep, he stared at the mirror. And then, it happened. The reflection stepped forward. Impossible. It mimicked him perfectly, every twitch, every breath, mirrored with airy precision. The whispers grew louder, forming words. You belong here now, with me. The room felt alive, cold air swirling, shadows stretching from the mirror, creeping toward him. Every instinct screamed to run, but he couldn't move. He realized the mirror was no longer a reflection. It was something else. Something that wanted him inside its world. The next morning, he was gone. His room was silent. All that remained was the mirror. Empty, cold, devoid of any reflection. But if someone looks too closely, just for a moment, they might see him, trapped, forever, staring back from within the glass. A faint whisper echoes from the edges of the mirror. I'm still here. And the shadows seem to lean closer, waiting, watching. English outro. That was the end of episode 19 of Dynamic Dark. If you enjoyed these terrifying stories, make sure to comment below which story scared you the most. The best comment will be pinned by me, Aditya. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and family. Or you can suggest a creepypasta or international horror topic in the comments. The suggestion with the most likes will be featured in the next episode. Until then, keep listening to terrifying stories, because we'll be back soon with episode 20. And in the next episode, we'll bring you creepypasta horror stories. And yes, that will be the English episode. Stay tuned and continue watching the horror episodes of Dynamic Dark. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss notifications for new horror episodes. With new fears, new darkness, and new secrets. Join the Dynamic Dark family and become a part of the journey with 3 brand new stories.